project is on intimacy and sexuality in adolescence, specifically the correlation between the two and how adolescents view the correlation between the two themselves. Intimacy is a closeness between individuals, both physically and emotionally. Sexuality is a person's capacity for sexual feelings or their sexual preferences. Erik Erikson, in his stages of development, focuses on these two things in identity versus role confusion and intimacy versus isolation. The first stage that we're talking about, the identity versus role confusion, is when an adolescent is starting to discover what they want and what's important to them. This is important with sexuality and intimacy because first with sexuality, it's when adolescents discover what they want and what they prefer. It's when they figure out specifically who they're attracted to and what they're attracted to. For intimacy, this is when adolescents are forming relationships that they think are important. They're no longer focused solely on who they're around. It's what's going to be important to them. For the intimacy versus isolation, that's in late adolescence and young adulthood, and that's taking it a step further to where they're forming these relationships to last and benefit themselves. The attachment theory, although it focuses on when one is a child, affects how adolescents are going to form relationships. I decided to do my own research, and to do this, I randomly selected a male and female from 7th grade to 12th grade from each grade, and I asked them a series of questions. The questions included, what do you consider an intimate relationship? Would you say you have a lot or few intimate relationships? Are you sexually active, and in what way? If so, with a person you are intimate with? If not, what is stopping you? Is intimacy necessary for you to participate in sexual activity? So, of course, I reminded them that these answers are all anonymous. All of the information that would be kept is their gender and their age. The data I got back from this was that the younger kids all thought that intimacy was a necessity for a sexual relationship, but as they got older, intimacy wasn't as important as it was to the younger adolescents. I also discovered that females tended to say they had more intimate relationships because when they were defining intimate relationships, they talked about people that they cared about non-romantically as well, like their friends and their teachers and peers and people around them, whereas the majority of the males define intimate relationships as someone you are romantic with or you are family. So the females had a wider perspective on intimacy than the males did. The males believed that there was a high correlation between intimacy and sexuality, whereas the females did believe there was correlation, but it wasn't as high. From that information that I gathered about what the adolescents themselves thought about intimacy and sexuality, and what Erikson talked about with intimacy and sexuality, I concluded that there's a high correlation between the two.